Maybe we just end up. Just,
They're only,
I will-
from somebody or what?
no, but I was on my bike and
I'll call the
Yeah,
it's tight.
Wednesday, May 8th, 2024 meeting of the Trees and Greenery Committee to order. We have the minutes of the April meeting. Any comments?
Yeah, go ahead.
John?
Chairman, I don't know, I just haven't looked at that. Chairperson. I just, chairperson, I'm just making sure we have a votable quorum.
I think counted because we have, yeah.
Oh, Dennis
3,
is ill.
4, 5, 6.
And AJ's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
So we're
missing Dennis,
Should be.
AJ.
You're good.
Cool. We're good? Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
7 members total?
yes.
Oh, yeah, because we're short day. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Position is never.
Yeah. 3 missing.
So, any questions on the minutes? Okay. Tree removal requests. 470 Richards Avenue.
Yeah, so these trees and along with many others on today's agenda are from homeowners in the wake of that early April storm that we had that knocked over a bunch of trees. So 470 Richards, 2 Bradford pears remaining out of 3, and you can probably see when you went out and looked at the 2 trees, there was that big root ball cluster still in the ground. So they had a whole tree fail on their house. The tree that failed looks very similar to the 2 that remain. So they've been pruned by Eversource. They're incredibly one-sided, incredibly weighted, and there are some defects in both of these trees that pretty much, informs me that we could have another issue similar to what we had in early April with these 2 trees. Yeah, great picture.
Any questions? Anyone here on that?
I live at 470 Richards. And one of those trees already.
Oh,
had a
can you
partial-
come on up?
Oh,
Yeah, sorry.
Just one of those trees already had a partial failure. It fell. Luckily, none of our.
Just one
cars
second.
were- Yes.
You don't need finished by the time you sit down.
We just need your name and address for the record.
Pamela Esposito, 470 Richards Avenue. So one of the trees that is particularly weighted and lopsided, the reason it is that there was some pruning, but there was also half of the tree has already come down in a pretty traumatic event because it was the middle of the day and kids were playing and luckily everybody was safe, but it's a hazard.
And that was quite a few years ago.
Probably 1 year ago.
Oh, 1 year ago. Okay,
Uh-huh.
interesting. All right.
Yeah. So we
Anyway.
had a neighbor come out and do a rescue and move the big branch. I mean, it was giant.
Oh, wow.
Needed
Wow.
several men to move and it had been on my list to send you guys pictures, but
Yeah. I was gonna say, I don't have any.
I
I've
can
been-
send you a
yeah,
picture of the giant giant
Sure.
part of the tree that came down.
I think also what makes these matters worse is that Eversource just came back through Richards Ave and pruned everything under power line. So it looks even like it's even
Right.
more exacerbated, this issue.
Right, but it is to the point where people don't like to park in my driveway. My elderly parents park across the street. I gotta cross them across the street because nobody wants to park underneath that tree because it looks particularly precarious.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for getting up.
Anybody, do we have a motion to
I
recommend?
move
removal?
to recommend removal.
Second.
By Joanna, any discussion, all in favor?
Hi.
Great, thank you.
Um,
Wait, can I ask a question or do I come back up?
Sure. Yeah.
Does that mean that we'll have other trees replanted or is there ability to replant? Because
Yep.
we like trees.
So we'll, our operations, we'll remove stump grind. Depending on time of year, we'll loam and seed and then plant the next spring. So we always plant every beginning of April, essentially.
And she can also perhaps have some say.
Yeah, I
But
mean, we.
He'll present a few different types of trees and
Yeah.
is that true? Lance?
We buy, what we buy is what we buy, and then if homeowners are so inclined to be a part of that process, we'll send over what we have available, and then based on that, we can move forward.
And what
Yeah.
is your name?
My name is Max. I'm the arborist foreman with Public Works.
And you can contact him at 603-427-30.
How do you know that? How do you know that by heart, by memory?
And just ask for the arborist.
Eversource does publish tree selection, 30 trees under 30 feet, which because of the wires in front of your house.
Right.
you may want to access that. It's a very good document.
Mhm.
Yeah, you'll be
Selecting
limited.
appropriate trees that
Yeah.
won't get up into those wires.
Right.
No pairs. We won't do any pairs.
No. And then what Max does is they do a wish list. They send it to the nursery in the fall and then they get what they get come spring. Is
Yeah.
that true?
Yeah,
Mhm.
we have a pretty, it's an educated wish list,
Yeah.
so we'll have their inventory. We'll select what we want, and then there are some slight changes, but typically, what they have available is a nice wide variety, and we get a nice wide variety of trees, so, yeah.
Did we vote on that?
Yes. we-
Yeah.
303 Thornton Street.
Yes, another, is anyone here from 303?
Mhm.
303 Thornton? No? So we removed a tree next to 303 Thornton because of that storm in early April. And both of these trees are, well, the tree still standing is in a very similar condition to the tree that we removed that had a very large leader come out of it. You know, we were able to remove that one tree during that storm because what was lost was so great and it was related to storm damage. So we felt that it was still relatively hazardous, so we removed it. And the homeowner approached us and requested that we also remove this tree here. There are, in the canopy when this large leader from the neighboring tree fell over, it was hung up in this tree and on top of the neighbor's front step. So we had to rig out and we set up some of our contraptions, but when we were setting up our rigging gear, I was able to sort of get a general look in the canopy of this tree, and there are cavities with resting water. You know, there is some dead up there, so it's definitely not in the best condition. If we were to go through and do a prune, I feel like what would be left up there would be inappropriate for the tree to continue living any kind of healthy life, I suppose. So that's pretty much my basis for the removal at this point.
Any
The tree
questions?
that you did take down
Yeah.
is on a different piece of property.
Yes, that was at 295 Thornton Street.
Any other questions?
Would you guess the age of the tree?
30 years.
I was gonna say, yeah, between 30 and 40 years, I would, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we have a
Mr.
motion?
Maple Man, you would
Do we have a
know.
motion to recommend removal?
I so moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
To me, the tree looks in reasonably good condition. And there's a pattern here of taking down trees that people think might fall.
Mm-hmm.
And this tree, I think can be saved.
Any,
So silver maples are notorious for having failure. You know, when they get a rot at the Y. So I'm more inclined, if it was a different type of tree, I'd probably agree with you. But you know, where Max is, you know, trained in hazard detection for trees and feels it's appropriate to remove, I would rather err on the side of caution.
That was one of the reasons I asked about the age of the tree, because it's a silver maple. I
Mhm.
know they're very brittle. And I've literally seen chunks of silver maple just come down unexpectedly.
That
So-
tree we took down on Lincoln Avenue 3 months ago, have you looked at the stump? The tree was in perfect condition.
I have looked at that stump. I've stood on that stump. I know.
Oh,
We're talking 80, is that 88
Mm.
Lincoln?
By Dick's house, yeah.
just noticed. the
So I
stump today.
believe the tree at 470 that did fall down was recommended to be removed. And we chose not to. So previously, the one that did fall down. So
Mhm.
you know, it's crystal balling, you know, certain trees you think, you know, I have a pear tree in my backyard that's got, you know, maybe an inch of live stuff at the base. And I would have sworn it would have fallen down 10 years ago,
Mhm.
but it's still going,
Mhm.
you know. I make sure I prune it so that if it does fall, it's not gonna take the corner of my house out. But, you know, trees are amazing.
Had we requested to take that pear tree down before?
I didn't request
I
it.
I don't recall.
I love those trees, but they now are.
Based on, I don't know, I guess I was talking to the staff and they said these trees had gone through previously.
I think when Chuck Baxter was the arborist foreman, he had, I believe the conversation was, there was interest in maybe getting these in front of the committee for a removal discussion, but Yeah.
I misunderstood the conversation then.
Yeah.
I was led to believe that we
Okay.
previously,
Not that I recall.
anyway, yeah, I mean, it's, as Peter said, you know, if we're trying to read the tea leaves on these trees, you know, if you were to ask me if the neighboring tree at 295 was gonna have a significant leader failure, I probably would have said, no, it looks, you know, relatively healthy from, you know, if we're doing just because there are 3 levels of our, when we're classifying the health of a tree, you know, we're quantifying it, you know, there are 3 levels, at level 1, 2, and 3, and level 1 is just a drive by and you're going and just getting a really general look at the tree in a car or walking by. Level 2 is you're getting out, getting some instruments and examining specific areas, and level 3 is using even more involved instruments, things that are $10,000 or $20,000, and it's sonar and it's resistographs and all these different you know, measurements. So when I was up in that bucket truck, setting up this rigging equipment, looking down from the top of this tree, being able to see into, you know, all of these attachment points to these other branches, to me, it looked appropriate to do the removal, because if we were trying to remove some of the hazards out of this tree and taking those into account in that pruning, I don't know if there would be a whole lot left of this tree. And I think it may look healthy, and you know, before it's even leafed out, I did notice some dead. So yeah, you know, I think my preference would be to remove it and get something else in there, but I do see that there could be a path forward, even if it is a little bit more, I guess, precarious than just the removal.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
The
Mike.
trees that have recently gone down. Can you rate in your progression of the causes and reason? Is it the overall tree's health or ground saturation? I mean, these things are coming down left and right, don't get me wrong. but
Yeah.
And also
The soil.
in relation to these storms that we've had.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And before you, and one more thing, so can you also address like the interrelation between one tree goes down and what happens to the other tree? It's, you know, neighbor.
I think that'll
Does it-
come up at 85.
Because I think we're gonna,
Yeah.
yes, this is,
Yeah.
yeah, I see what's coming on.
I think at least if we're framing it in the case of 303 Thornton, I don't know if there's gonna be too much of a change I mean, both of these trees are still relatively small. They're relatively shielded by the trees, not the trees, excuse me, the structures around them.
Mhm.
So for me, and it's not, you know, it's not terribly big. It's not like it's being put under an immense amount of pressure from, you know, all of its limbs. It's relatively tight. So that's not a big concern, I think, for me when I'm looking at it. And Michael, to answer you, I think the majority of these trees, I think with the exception of 470 Richards, because of all the weight that was pulling it toward the house,
Mhm.
and those winds were incredible, right? Like, but I'm not trying to contradict myself either, because I know not the city for a public tree, but homeowners lost trees on South Street. And I can't imagine the grounds were very saturated up there, because you're kind of on top of the hill a little bit. But I think the winds were just so intense.
No, I agree with what you're
Yeah.
saying relative to those trees.
Yeah, but we'll get to 85 Lawrence next, but I think that was also a case where the ground was incredibly saturated, was running down the hill. Same thing with 800 and 790 McGee from a few months ago. Again, saturated, windy scenarios cause those trees to fail. So, yeah,
And that's
Yeah.
affecting that groundwater is affecting more of the more shallow rooted trees and the tall spruces and.
I think it affects trees, like when you have water completely saturating soil around roots, it will affect them all equally. When you have trees that are particularly tall that have a very wide canopy with sail to it,
Mhm.
those forces just react incredibly on the root system. I think in the cases of some of these trees, we have seen some root decay. So at 85 Lawrence in the spruce that did fail from
Mhm.
that early storm, at 800 McGee, another Norway spruce that
Mhm.
failed had some root decay. So
Huh.
I think there are so many different factors, and that's where the crystal balling comes in, because it's, we can't see the extent of decay or damage to the root systems, but we can make an educated guess if the canopy is starting to decline a little bit,
Sure.
or there are structural issues that the tree hasn't addressed. Yeah, I don't know, we're kind of getting into
The
there's a lot
educational
to
part of
cover.
it, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
303 Thornton.
Do we have a motion to recommend removal on 303 Thorn?
Right.
I moved
I
it.
think
Yeah,
that
I seconded it.
motion, Peter second.
Peter, okay, and any discussion? All in favor of recommending removal of 303 Thorn?
Aye.
Aye. Aye, because you got up there and you looked down into it and it was an extra added level of
It's a little
of
bit more than
seeing
what we
that.
typically
Correct.
do. Yeah.
I'll go on record with that
Mike, you're
as a yes.
No, I value your judgment.
Oh, thank you.
I'm in favor.
Mhm.
So,
I'd just like to speak, Mr. Chairman. We want to keep, trees that appear healthy in place. Max has done a great job over the years, identifying those trees that are healthy and that are really more of a nuisance for a resident versus one that potentially could be a risk. So I agree with what Mike said. We hire professionals to do these evaluations. And, it's important from my perspective to support, and not every decision is going to be right. We make mistakes, but, at the same time, we're also managing, thousands of trees. And it's important for us to have a consistent methodology in how we do that.
but someone coming just into this meeting might get the impression that we kind of willy-nilly recommend removal, and if someone looking at the meetings over a period of years would realize that almost every time we recommend a removal, it's kind of last resort, that generally everybody on this committee is saying they don't want to lose a single tree.
Mhm.
And the other thing, someone might get a wrong impression of optically on today's seating arrangement, that it's not really like an elementary school dance with the boys on one side and the girls on the other.
Well,
Okay, 85 Lawrence Street.
thank you, thank you, Peter, for that overview.
So, Max, you can
Yeah.
introduce and Tracy.
85 Lawrence Street, again, related to that storm in early April, one Norway spruce fell and missed your house by inches. Kind of incredible. So there's another equally sized Norway spruce that we're addressing today. Yeah. I think we sort of touched on a couple of the key points a little bit earlier. I believe that there's a lot of water runoff. There's a lot of ground cover, and I think that can lead to a weakened root system. And after speaking with Jamie McCarty, who's one of our GIS specialists, just kind of I was trying to figure out the right-of-way boundary, and they are on the right-of-way. There's also a water service line that's essentially underneath both of those two trees. And I got talking to Jamie about that, and he thinks that those were put in within the last 10 to 15 years. And my thinking there is that there may have been some trenching damage that occurred to one or both of those trees. It actually, according to the map, it looks like it kind of runs straight between where those two trees were. So having, that prior knowledge of the site, and the potential trenching damage that occurred, and then also the current, the way the water runs off of the street up there. And then all of the ground cover kind of tells me that we may be sitting on a very similar circumstance for this tree, like the one that failed.
Thank you, Tracy. If you give your name.
Dr. Tracy Clarkson, 85 Lawrence Street. Yeah, it's somewhat miraculous that it didn't crush our house. If it had been the other tree, I truly believe I would not be sitting here. There's no storm drain on 85 on Lawrence Street at all. They haven't done this separation, so it is a river that comes down the street, and its first exit is our front walkway. Second exit is the corner of Lawrence and Kensington. And so there's a lot of water that comes down there. And quite honestly, it's terrifying. I can't look at that tree. I love these trees desperately. I don't want to see them. I didn't want to see one fall. I don't want to see the other one go. But I feel like it is the better thing for our house, our home.
Are they of equal size?
Yeah.
100 feet tall.
I was like,
Thank you,
massive.
Tracy.
Massive, I know,
100 feet tall,
impressive.
60 years old. I counted the rings.
Oh, well, thank you.
I saved 2 pieces to make into
Oh.
a piece of furniture. I mean, I really love them. We've been there for almost 35 years and they're an important part of our landscape, and
Mhm.
it makes me sad, but
Well, thank you, Tracy. Any
Thank you, Tracy.
questions? Do we have a recommendation? for
I
removal?
move to remove
By Pat. Seconded by,
badly.
It doesn't look like the tree has been maintained or pruned with the lower branches of the years at all.
And with the sap
I
that
know
comes
we have
off,
done.
the sap that comes off the back of that tree, that's healthy, kind of. Just
Yeah, it's
normal.
the
I just sort of noticed
vegetation,
that
it's
more.
not- Yeah, I'm nothing super alarming. It happens
Mhm.
to most conifers.
Mhm.
so we have a motion by Pat. I guess we'll take Michael's comment a second to get any discussion. All in favor of recommending removal?
All right.
I
Opposed? Opposed, Mike.
But reluctantly, because of all the birds and all the animals that are not going to be having a place to go home to. It gives me great pain when a tree like that goes down, but I understand and
It
I
does need
appreciate
to-
your safety and.
Yeah, it
But I
does
just wanna
need to, but if you
go
look
on the
into our
record.
yard,
Mhm.
we have planted probably 30 homes for birds
Thank you.
in
Great.
our yard. So,
Okay. Aye.
yeah, we love our birds as much as we love birds.
You love squirrels. You're gonna love when they separate the sewage out too.
I look forward to that.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Uh,
Tracy.
Yeah,
Good to
Two
see you.
50 Clinton Street.
Anyone here from 250?
Morning, Jess Patton, 250 Clinton Street.
Yes, so this is a Norway maple on a paper road. Kind of positioned to if you're from the street, kind of to the left of the structure at 250. So this tree, the homeowner requested this removal. When I went out and started looking around, to Norway, it's significantly co-dominant, and there are some, that in and of itself is a little bit of obviously it's a structural and safety issue for sure. And there was some evidence of poor compartmentalization in between those included stems on that tree.
Peter, do you have a picture of that?
Sure.
Just wondering.
Pull it up.
Thank you.
There's 2 trees beside each other. What is the other tree?
Behind I believe that's also a maple.
Same.
I believe it's in Norway as well. Yep, that way.
You must be very skilled at reading maps. Can you explain to me how that
See,
tree
you've
is on
gotten so
city
fast.
property?
It's a paper.
Drainage, it's a drainage right away,
Oh,
that comes down right between, there's like a paper right away that goes.
That was my question.
I did not know that term, paper road. That was new to me.
I guess
Oh,
technically
really?
it'd be a paper road because it goes into the water out there, but they're, I think that I call it a paper road
It's,
because.
yeah, it's what legal calls it.
Yeah,
That's what, yeah.
so there's a,
It's not appropriate.
so on our GIS system, it's, you know, it's separated by yellow and red lines. It's a red line straight out. If,
What's
is
the
it,
width of it?
is it Sparhawk? I think it's pretty
Sparhawk,
much the
yeah,
width of
Sparhawk.
Sparhawk and it runs straight toward the water.
Okay.
I do think that, looking at that GIS system, it's that Norway. So the
No.
one, yep, that
Yeah.
one right there.
That
And
one.
then the other tree to the left is also on that, but then there's that Norway sort of right behind the one that we're discussing today. That
Right
I
there.
believe there, it's.
Yep.
I believe that one is technically on 250 Clinton's property.
Wow.
It's very close. And that's my reading of it. Obviously, if we needed to get pins found and run some string, but my understanding is we only have two on that paper road. So yeah,
And all three are Norway spruce?
maple.
Maybe, I mean maple, yeah. sorry.
Yeah, so we're just Peter, if you want to zoom in on that first tree. Yeah, so we're really only looking at that one right there. So you can see right where the cursor is actually, that's where we can see some poor compartmentalization between those included leaders. So when I first started here 4 years ago, I went out and pruned that tree to kind of pull some of those branches away from the structure. There was a thought at one point to maybe eliminate one of those leaders, but that doesn't quite remove the hazard from all of the other remaining leaders. And the argument about, all right, we've removed a tree from this site and now there's this one tree that's still standing. It also, that wind buffeting and distribution of loads also is when you think about a tree, all those same forces and those principles also apply in these cases where you have included leaders. You take one of those away, now the remaining leaders who were maybe using that third leader as sort of a buffer or some kind of wind distribution or load distribution is now gone. Now you're putting forces onto this tree with included leaders that has never really felt those forces before. That can lead to tearing of everything that remains. So that was the thought process Chuck Baxter, previous arborist foreman, and I had when we were just out there pruning. And now that we're revisiting this issue, I'm like, well, I think the reality is the removal makes sense on that, because if we keep just pruning and pruning, it's like, well, is this really taking care of any potential hazard of this tree? The answer is no. It's just giving the homeowner clearance, and it's pulling a little bit of weight away from the structure, but it's not really relieving any of it.
I would say that's exactly on Coakley where I am, what happened in a couple of trees in the right of way one was a Norway maple. And a couple of the bigger leaders got trimmed off and then the tree just started to fail and we just had to remove. So.
Yeah, we're talking about, when we're talking about 85 Lawrence and it's that large Norway spruce, I'm like, oh, this is a very similar argument. We can't just pull a leader off of this tree and expect it to be fine and be, completely risk-free. So that's, Norways are tough, resilient trees. They obviously love putting out, I think overall, aside from that, the tree is relatively healthy. I don't see much dead in it. It's just because of the nature of the structure right in that area.
Now, would this be an area you would recommend to replant something? Or because this is a paper street that kind of is heading towards North Mill Pond?
Yeah, I don't see why not, only because it is a slope. It is right next to the water. I'm sure highest observable tide can come up pretty high and I'm sure how high does that tide come up?
8 feet.
Okay, so it rises 8 feet.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it comes up about halfway up the bank.
Okay,
There's a steep bank there. My house is on a point on North Mill Pond, so we get a great deal of wind coming through there, and we've had branches come off that tree and damage the fascia on our house. And it's a large portion of that canopy is above my property.
Yeah.
So it's a concern.
In the deck. and
It's
like-
right up against my deck,
Yeah,
yeah.
when I was like walking down.
Yeah.
We're taking this tree down, expose the other two to,
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, that is
It's a lot, right?
absolutely, that I would have to go out and look and see, I mean, in my memory, these trees are far enough apart that I'm sure they are benefiting from, some kind of, wind dampening from each other, but I'd have to go and look and really examine that.
So the answer to the question whether we'd revegetate, we would, we want to stabilize the embankment there. Whether it's a paper street or not, it still needs to, there is some erosion that's occurring in that area.
Yeah, and both
So-
of those other Norway maples are on on steeper portions of the bank, not the one behind, but definitely the other one is halfway down the bank. And if you go down the bank and look back up, you
Your
can
root
see how the
exposed.
erosion has come over the trunk of that tree and is cutting underneath it. So those will be issues at some point, probably not too far in the
Yeah.
distant future, based on where they are on the bank.
Um,
Do we? Sorry, you just triggered a sector, but do we have an erosion mitigation plan for some of these areas? No?
No, we are aware of the erosion in that area and a slope stabilization effort is probably warranted. It's just a matter of, with all the priorities, which one's burning brightest?
I just think it's something that, not necessarily this committee, but as a community, we really need to start talking about homeowners and with the city. I know, obviously, we're not like Nantucket, but when you look at other places that are sea line, even if you go up towards Wells and we're starting to see, as we call it, the earth taking back its property.
Yeah, we put in a riprap retaining wall on our portion of the property back probably 20 years ago. I don't think that's something that's allowed anymore, but something that we did with the hope that the city would continue that around to that paper road, which never happened. And I did have Peter Britz come out and look at it last spring.
Couple years
And
ago.
just last spring, he
Okay,
came out.
I know the abutting property owner around the corner had done some work
Yeah.
that was not permitted.
Oh,
And that triggered a review of the area. So
okay. I
know-
had him separately come out for my portion. But yeah, he came out and looked at it. So.
Okay.
We're aware of it.
yeah.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion to recommend removal?
So moved.
Peter makes a motion, seconded by Max. All in favor of the motion? All in favor of recommending removal?
I'm struggling with this one.
Me too.
I guess. Have you guys considered, do you have a plan in place or consideration in place that if we remove this tree, you plan on removing the other Norway that's on your property?
I'm actually not sure that's on my property. My property line is right up against my deck, so I'm not sure that that's on my property, but I don't have any plans to remove it. But like I said, I think if erosion continues, it could be a risk at some point that would have to be mitigated.
So I think,
I was just asking because the concern I've heard from some committee members is that a lot of trees use other trees as windshields. So if we remove that tree, the likelihood, it sounds like, of that tree that potentially could be on your property is gonna be exponentially increased. That tree will fail and need to be removed. And so I think before moving forward on this motion, if possible, I would like to see property line to see if, if we think that if we're gonna have to remove both, then I think that I would be more apt to wait a little bit and then figure out if we're gonna have to remove both, or if it's gonna be the property owner's responsibility to at least let let you know that, hey, this is going to affect and this tree is gonna be removed and you might wanna plan and budget and figure out kind of, because that is gonna be huge. It's gonna, I would assume, need to be.
yeah,
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, the establishment of a property line costs thousands of dollars.
Okay. never mind.
So, and we do not have budget
Yeah,
to do that.
okay.
If it's your recommendation, I'm fine taking down the other tree. That's not a problem for me, even if it's not my you know, if it's ambiguous, I'm fine with that, if that's the issue.
I just want to make sure that you're aware that removing this tree is gonna, it sounds like increase the likelihood that the other tree will have to be removed.
Yeah, and I would want to plant something else,
Yeah.
at least one other thing. I don't want to not have any, I have like 3 trees on my property, so
And one of those,
I just want them to be safe trees.
and you have an ash on your property too, that's not.
Yeah, it's not looking good. Yeah, I did have somebody come out and look at that. But I don't think there's a lot of hope for it at this point.
Not at this point.
Yeah.
No.
The only other caveat I'd like to bring up is because of how close these trees are to essentially wetlands, right?
Mhm.
My understanding of the procedure is if the tree is either dead or has a structural issue or is diseased or whatever, we would still, like, if this was a private, let's remove it from this address completely. If there's a tree that a homeowner wants removed so close to a wetland zone, it would need to have a letter from a certified arborist saying, hey, this tree is diseased, dead, hazardous, compromised, whatever the case is.
I have that actually.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So,
I can- too.
yeah, so when we're talking about removing an additional tree that maybe doesn't necessarily have those, that's, I don't know. I just wanted to bring that up just in this case, because if there is nothing necessarily wrong with this tree other than the potential for it to be experiencing a little bit of more wind loading or whatever the case is, I just figured I'd want to
Mhm.
just kind of bring that.
Because
up.
the root structure does tamp
Yeah.
down the erosion.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's part of, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that's, I just wanted to,
Always learning.
yeah, just wanted to bring that up because that has come up in the past
Mhm.
with private residents trying to just understand, what
Mhm,
they
yeah.
have to do to get a tree removed, even on their private property, if it's within, is it 50 feet of the highest observable tide line?
I believe it's 50 feet.
It's like, that's, and if you're saying it's 8 feet up the hill, 50 feet is across, it's gonna be across the street.
It's my whole property.
It's your whole property,
Yeah,
right?
it's my whole property.
So that's, I just wanted to
Mhm, good, thank you. Appreciate that.
yeah, so if we wanted to table this and revisit it next month. Do a little bit further
Okay, well,
investigation.
So you want to have a, change that, amend the motion to recommend postpone this till the June meeting?
So that was, I was the one that moved it, so I would accept that modification.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. Should we keep, do you have a copy?
Oh, I have.
Okay.
247 Cass Street.
What's that?
It's a sad little tree.
That's a sad little tree.
Yes.
Do you have a recommendation to remove it?
I recommend to remove that sad little tree.
Remove and replace.
Remove and replace.
Recommended by Deb, seconded by
second.
Michael. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is.
Thank you.
Greenland Road at the off-leash dog park.
I found it with my
You
e-bike.
found it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Found it.
Found it?
Nice, okay. I included the map with the
Thank
red
you.
dot and I'm like, all right, this has to work because
Mine came through.
oh, nice,
Oh, I
okay.
did not.
I tried clicking it a few times and it, yeah. for
Again,
whatever,
I just
technology.
always appreciate tromping in places that I normally don't do.
Uh-huh.
And then for this committee, I don't go there because I don't have a dog and I don't go there. But
It's a good walk.
it's fabulous. I appreciated having to go out there. My question is along the line of all of those trees, there's a bunch of tall trees.
Yeah.
And why is that one singled out?
That was my
So-
question, exactly.
It was brought, so I don't know if any of you had the sort of door hangs left by Eversource with a notice saying, we'd like to remove a tree on your property.
Mhm.
I essentially received one of those and this was a part of their typical pruning maybe a year ago. I think
Huh.
they were in there, or 2 years ago. I'm not entirely sure. This was flagged for removal then, but because it's technically outside of the easement for that large infrastructure,
Yeah.
I think they just kicked it off of that circuit and someone just happened to stop in to revisit this tree. I have no, it's
You mean
literally,
someone from Eversource?
ACRT, which is a contractor of Eversource.
Oh.
They approached me with that sort of door hang paperwork.
Huh, so
Uh,
they suggested the one pine, but so we don't know why they didn't suggest the
The
other
only,
pines.
yeah, the only reason I can think is that,
They recently did some work there.
yeah, they were working the Great Bog on the other side of 33, and then
Mhm.
and when you're parked at the dog park parking lot where the community garden is, to the left-hand side, they were not sure what the extent of that work is, but they were in there recently.
Because there are trees there that seem taller to me.
Exactly.
So
And I know that this one just has half of it's gone, so the weight of it is towards the line. I
that's the only thing.
understand that.
And I asked, I had a face-to-face interaction with this representative from ACRT and asked what the basis for the request is, and she said, oh, it was tagged, and yeah, so I think I verbatim, there was a portion of in the description. Yeah, the tree is just off the easement for the large transmission lines, and they're requesting it due to the risk of interfering with these, like, that's straight from the
Mhm.
door hang that I received. My best guess is, yeah, all all of the canopy is weighted toward their infrastructure. That's all I got. That's all I got. I didn't see anything really structurally at the base, any issues that really stood out. It doesn't look diseased. It looks like a pine in a stand of pines.
Like the other ones.
It's just
Yeah.
a risk.
Yeah,
It's-
I think it's
that's
just
a big risk.
and a part of me, um, you know, I don't know. It's one of those things where I tend to, like, they're in that realm. They are the professionals. If
Mm.
they happen to, if they think that this tree is a risk, but not the one 6 feet away, a similar distance from the lines,
Mhm.
like there's possibly a reason that, I'm inclined to agree with that. But having said that, looking at the tree, trying to come up with some reasoning on my own, that's the only thing that I saw. It was just
Mhm.
weighted in the canopy toward that infrastructure.
And it is the one, it's the first in that whole stand. So I think that one goes and then, the one next to it,
Yeah.
next to it.
I'm not,
I don't know. I'm just a
yeah,
little,
I think it's valid for, like, that argument's valid. Again, going back to 85 Lawrence, because that's a really great example. But because it's sort of at the tree line, I think it's not quite as valid of an argument here. But I agree. If you remove one, you're putting forces on other
that's why
trees
they
around
grow in
it.
stands
Yeah.
to protect one another from.
Do we have a motion to recommend or not recommend removal?
Do we have any jurisdiction to deny this if Eversource is the source requesting it?
I believe we
I
do.
think so.
So you're saying no?
I think they'd be happy if our decision was no, because to go in there and take that one tree down, that's gonna, with all those overhanging power lines. I think they'd be happy with just moving on. That's, I can't speak for them, but
So is that a motion to recommend that we not remove?
yes, that is my motion.
I'll second that.
Is that right? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
644 Greenland Road.
Oh,
Anyone here from Greenland Road, 644?
We had an attendee, so maybe that's.
nice of you guys, you to stay.
Very interesting.
Interesting.
We call it the happiest little.
Happiest little. group. Education.
The happy stuff comes after the road rest.
I was approached by the homeowner of 644 Greenland Road about actually removing 2 trees. Talk them out of one. But this one, I can see an argument as to why we should remove this tree. Because in my thought, I would just go in and do some road clearance,
Mhm.
pull out some dead wood, and kind of leave it at that. I did want to just bring up, so this is a good example of a tree that I wouldn't be surprised if it was approved for removal, nor would I be surprised if we all wanted to keep it. I think the current state, given the areas of rot and decay on this tree toward the base, if it were to fail, there's really no The only immediate, like it, so I'm sure you've all, of course, have seen this tree. If it were to fail at
Can
the
we
base,
take a peek at that tree again? Can you bring that one up? Thank you.
that's gonna go just across the road. And there are no targets unless a car is happened to be at that stop sign at that exact moment when the tree
Mhm.
is about to fail. So when we talk about, again, not to, I feel like this is the well that keeps on giving, but if we go to 85 Lawrence, right, like that tree at that site, the target is this person's house and it's a
Yeah.
big target.
Yes.
This tree, which is 90 to 100 feet
Six.
tall, it's gonna hit that house. But here, you know, this tree is just getting along. It's not in the best condition, it's not in the worst condition, but are there any targets? Is there any risk of failure? Yeah, there's some risk of failure. Is there consequences of that failure? No, it's gonna land on the street. So for me, when I look at this tree, I'd be happy just to prune it, get it up over the road a little bit, get some of the deadwood out and just let it go. If it happens to start declining and it doesn't, you know, send out any foliage next year, we'll remove it then. But I think for right now, you know, and then at the corner, Peter, to your, yep, so go up to that road there and the tree will be on your.
Yeah, right there on the
right
left.
there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been pruned by Eversource. It's really just weighted over the road. We prune the lowest stuff off of it. We get the deadwood out and we let it do its thing because it's not falling backward into the utility lines onto
Mhm.
private property. It's gonna fall into Oxford
Mhm.
and that's
You know, this
that.
tree particular, and also the tree that we removed, if I can just mention this, the tree that was Eversource wanted to remove farther up on Middle Road on the left-hand side, that really big tree that kind of went up, you know, that was kind of split. Do you remember the one that we said okay to? Huge tree. Once you get onto Middle Road going into town on the left-hand side, the trunk is still left there, you know, that they
Yeah,
took
the
down.
oak, yeah.
And I think that this is my thought a lot about trees and tree canopy, and I think this might be something that we want to continue to be thoughtful and sensitive about, is that the impact of trees on traffic calming is really tremendous and should not be underrated. And I think I might, you know, we have owned a condo down on 155 Griffin, so I'm very well aware of people get off of 95 after hours of driving. And they just lickety split, you know, down that street, down to Middle Street. I think that Eric Eby and his staff have done an amazing job working with the people on Middle Road to really take care of traffic calming, to put up the pedestrian, what do you call that light, that
Rapid flashing beacon.
rapid flashing lights? That's right. But I think that the more, and this is known for decades in the traffic world, is trees add a lot to slow down. It's part of traffic calming, and you can put up speed bumps and you can put police out and you can do a lot. But once you remove infrastructure and you start to open up those pathways, it's just sort of kind of like, oh, I can just go faster here. And I think trees remind people that they are living, that there are neighbors living in those spaces. So it really stimulated a lot of my revisiting of smart growth and complete streets and all of those programs that we have adopted here in Portsmouth. So I think going forward, our committee, I do think of tree canopy and slowing down and signifying. And that's
Can you
my
explain
little
how you
2 cents
approve
right now.
it, please?
I think just for the first, I think goal that I would prune for is a little bit of height clearance. And then alleviate, so because it's so one-sided, I'd probably pull out some crossing and interfering through the upper part of that canopy to just pull some of that weight back centralized, because it is getting a little long over the road. So to just kind of help it pull itself back in, that was my thought anyway.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah, so that's still, yep, that tree right there. Yep. Yeah, that's from 2018. It's currently growing.
So you leave that left leader on it.
Yep, so anything that's dead, I would pull off. I'm not gonna, yeah, I think there's, yeah, actually right where your cursor was, I believe that is dead. Whatever Eversource did to prune anything on the backside, you know, there wasn't really anything noteworthy to do back there other than deadwooding and, but yeah, just a little bit of attention paid to the road, giving it some clearance, so that no trucks could potentially hit it or pull on it, and then just alleviate some of that weight. Yeah. That's what I would do for that tree instead of removing it.
Mhm.
So we have a recommendation to,
I will recommend, based on Max's observations and willingness to prune that tree, to put a motion on the floor to follow his instructions.
seconded by Pat.
Second that,
Any
yeah.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Um. Discussion of selection size and success of recent tree planting. It's sort of just almost a monthly update, but we had a question. And Pat had a question that someone presented about. And we can actually pass that the information now. Well, one of the success of the bare root planting.
Oh, that was Jeff's
Interestingly,
question.
AJ's class this afternoon is gonna be
I'm so excited.
Hmm.
Yeah. Big weight.
So any preliminary thoughts in the last 2 years of bare root planting versus root ball planting? And do you notice a difference at this point?
It's the only tree planting I've known for the city, so I can't quite comment because
I
Yeah.
I can speak to it.
Yeah.
We had a failure rate of the burlap trees, probably 30%.
Oh.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're probably maybe 5-10%.
I would say, if we're doing,
And we're, instead of 30 trees, we're planting 100.
Mhm.
So the success rate is significant. And it's definitely, I think, a much better way of approaching the trees. I mean, the trees grow much faster when they're bare root like that. And it's much less traumatic, I think.
Anecdotally, I used to work for the city of Denver, Colorado, and I was on their tree planting crew. And we were planting 2,000 trees a year. So, yeah, something like that. Huge operation, 2 crews, all mechanized, like we were planting with machines. And we weren't paying it. I'm not trying to slander there. I'm sure it's a whole lot better now because that was, 6-7 years ago. But we weren't paying attention to root flare. We weren't taking all of the burlap off. We were planting way too deep. We were, so there are things that we're doing here in Portsmouth that make so much more sense for tree planting and tree planting operations in the establishment that comes after. It is very rewarding to see a tree that we planted in because we didn't do it in 2020 because of COVID. So in 2021, that was our first bare root tree planting year. There are trees that have just absolutely taken off. And my understanding is the smaller the caliper of tree that's going in, the shorter the amount of time it needs to establish in soil. Because if you think about it, you're planting a 3-inch DBH tree that's ball and burlap. Think of all the roots that it once had to get that tall. You're cutting them down to something like a 2-foot, 3-foot ball. It has to send all of those roots back out to get itself essentially back to that to support that size of tree. If we're planting trees that are a lot smaller in caliper, so we're doing 1.5 to 1.75 inches, those trees are going to have a much faster they're going to establish in a much faster time period.
But aren't the trees that are wrapped and raised in a nursery, haven't they been root pruned over the years so that you've got
Yeah,
a greater percentage of the roots?
yes, you do, but I think at least just, I guess in my experience, that while that is true, to have that tree, I guess establish, but sustain and establish are a little bit different. I guess how I'm framing it. So once you put that tree in the ground, how long is it going to take to then put out bigger growth? Like I'm sure it's putting on some and it's foliating and it's looking really nice, but to really get in the ground and really take off for growth, I think that's the establishment period that I'm referring to here. It could like, yeah, they can be root pruned in the nursery, but they're probably just sustaining what they currently have above ground. Versus once they're in the ground and they hit that establishment point, when the roots match the tree above ground, that's when that growth really, really takes off. So I feel like there are trees, and this is just an example, but there are trees. We all know where Tor Portsmouth is, kind of where Lafayette and one meet. So there were trees planted in there. I think they're Japanese tree lilac, and they are like kind of like they just look stunted. And that could be a couple of different things. It could have been the culture around their planting. It was a contractor who did it. So I don't, I can't speak to how it was done, but when I'm thinking about how long they've been in the ground versus what they look like now against trees that we planted bare root in there since 2021, those trees that we planted are very close in size to diameter, and their canopies are fuller, and it's just
A good comparison.
yeah. So I just, I know that there are, that root pruning that occurs and all that stuff. I think when we put a tree in the ground and it takes that year or two to hit that established, and that's why we stop watering after 2 years, because we think by then that tree is hit, has produced its roots enough to support itself at that point, and enough roots to sort of send way more foliage out and way more branches.
Were all the trees that are on Islington Street, were those bare rooted trees?
No, Islington, the new,
The by Papa Wheelies and down there, that was the old
That was-
burlappy.
That was the contractor put those in,
Yeah.
but with our
Salmon Falls put those in for Severino's contract.
and that was we were watching them like hawks. That was if it was planted too deep, we have them pull it out and put it, plant it properly. If they left any material in there, they were pulling those trees out and taking the material out. So we were watching them really closely for sure.
The survival rate looks pretty good on those, so.
Yeah, they're doing really good. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm really pleased with how those have all turned out.
Gone redwoods they put in all field.
Yeah, the one at
But
the
they shouldn't put them in
Hannaford,
anyway.
at the
Yes.
Hannaford, yeah.
Oh, bad choice.
Failed.
tree.
So
Maybe
you
like-
mentioned last time the Nissa sylvaticus
Yeah.
hadn't done well as bare rooted. Do we have any idea why a certain species
I think it's just
fails?
I don't
Yeah,
know. I think
the
it comes down
nursery
to a speed, like it can either tolerate it or it can't.
Huh.
We were told we planted 4 bald cypress down in Pierce Island, kind of near where we removed
Yes.
those,
I
20, 30
remember,
red
yeah.
pines.
Yeah.
We were told those don't do very well bare rooted, and 4 out of the 5 are still alive today. So
Pretty good.
it's one of those things where we probably could have spent the money to get those 5 Nissa sylvatica and just try it out and see what happens. But I don't know. I think it comes down to a species, what they can tolerate versus what they can't. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, to understand so many do so well,
Yeah.
why others do not.
Yeah, I mean, when we're, just to kind of revisit sort of the thought process in our tree selections, we're buying things that we understand do really well in an urban environment, so they probably tolerate just anything. So they can likely tolerate being air spaded of all their soil. And I think when we get some of their trees, the roots look pretty rough. Right. So it is really, I wish I had taken some photos of some of our trees that we were pulling out of bags this spring, because a part of me didn't think they were going to make it. And the jury's still out, but we've seen trees with like just 2 little stems and no other smaller roots attached, and they've taken off. It's just kind of wild. I never know what to expect, honestly.
So the question and then answer, is this something you'd like on a frequently asked question on the city's webpage? Is that what the thought was, or?
I was thinking originally of just putting a blurb into the city newsletter now and then.
Sure.
Not every week or month, just when we felt it was some information worth sharing, just to educate people.
Sure.
Because I think people do look around and say, why do we plant such little trees? So,
Commonly asked
there's a-
question.
And there's a good reason for it.
Yeah.
So I
Very
thought
nice.
maybe start with that, at some point, maybe.
Sure, maybe a green moment or something like that.
Yeah, does that like go to Stephanie?
You
is
can,
that
yeah,
what-
we can fire it to Stephanie, she and Monty
tell her.
Bohannon. Monty puts together the newsletter, so
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
get it to Monty. But
You like
yeah,
it?
Stephanie's appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay.
She supports our
No, it's good.
department.
So will you do that or should I do that or
This was sent to me?
no, I didn't send it. I just.
Yeah,
I
send it
just
to
made a
me and I'll get it,
copy.
I'll get it to
Okay.
Stephanie.
All right, but everyone agrees on, it's fine.
Well, I think, yes, I love this. I think that now that you might have a little bit of data on a success after what Peter was saying, Bear Root versus, that might be nice to add into this.
I wouldn't want to represent something as being absolute. That was anecdotal information.
Okay.
So,
All right. Okay. Well, I do think that's kind of
Question
an
comes
Just a
up.
higher success.
yeah,
just higher success rate. I think you probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, I love that. Good.
I don't know that I call them baby trees.
No,
No, you
They're
can, you
like-
can edit any way. you
I was gonna
want.
say they're probably,
10 years old.
I was gonna say like preteen trees. if we're-
Preteen.
That's in,
Oh,
yeah.
I'd add that. Preteen trees. I love that. That's great.
That's why they're so troublesome.
Yeah, that's right, there we go.
Um, update on what we kind of done this updating on the tree planting this year. How many have you got in the
We
ground?
did 154 this year. We
154.
Yes, we picked up a few extra trees from Millikins that were B and B trees, so not bare root. We did some additional magnolia plantings in Goodwin Park because we had lost a couple of those over a period of years. So we're slowly reincorporating new magnolia with new colors. Hopefully no one freaks out.
Those look nice.
Oh, you say they look nice.
What?
Yeah, so we did a couple yellow this year.
Oh, nice.
And Corin and I are
Oh,
thinking maybe we do
lovely.
pink or
Nice.
something.
Could I ask the choices that you made in front of the library?
Yeah.
What can you just tell a little bit, couple minutes of why you chose those?
Yeah, in that.
When I looked it up, I was like, Ohio Buckeye.
In that central area, that Buckeye will have really nice flowers. A lot of benefits to wildlife, right? Like who doesn't, what little critter probably won't eat a Buckeye seed? And then they really spread and take over, not take over, that sounds bad. It'll be as tall as it is wide. Yeah, it's not invasive.
Not invasive, don't
But it will be, it's, I kind of consider it like a large ornamental where the leaves are really nice.
Yeah.
Flowers, they have seeds. It will take that spot over nicely, not in an invasive way. The two other trees nearest the road are Ammermachia. Those are smaller ornamental trees. Again, kind of a unique tree for sure.
Mhm.
And then there are two Spaeth's alder.
Alder, that's
kind of
yeah, that's an
back.
interesting
And
choice.
those are all the reading that I had done in preparation for selecting them for purchase. They were, it was claimed that that's a really good replacement for ash trees. So they grow quickly.
Alders are,
This specific alder. So it has
Okay.
a similar looking leaf, similar colors in the fall, grows quickly. When I looked at our inventory, we didn't have any of those in the city. Figured we'll start with 5 and if
yeah,
they-
I haven't seen alders here, so that's
yeah.
cool.
And that's pretty much it.
I had a conversation with the librarians and everyone's very curious about what they are.
Hmm.
Would it be okay if I would label them like I've done historically, but it would be a stake in the ground label, not of course on the tree because it turns out to work. Is that
I have no problem. with it.
okay?
As long as the library's cool with it too, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, they're cool. Okay, be my pleasure.
Before you've already folded your paper.
Oh, I have a,
We have a couple of
I have a
sections. of old
7-year-old
business.
grandson, who's homesick and his
Oh.
father's got to get to work.
Oh,
so
oh,
I'm
yes.
We have a couple minutes to address two
We
things.
just-
Yeah.
Do you have something? really?
I was just gonna say Hillside. Are we?
Yeah,
so that's what
that
we
is
wanna
one of
bring
our
up.
old
Okay.
business.
That's
Yes.
like a readdressing Hillside.
So if you all recall back in October, we had talked about removing a tree at the corner of Hillside and Greenleaf. We sort of did this 90-day holding period to see if any of that traffic control measures would help. It did not. we're still getting, we're still hearing from residents about this issue, and I think there's gonna be, moving forward, there will be a sidewalk put in place on the side of the road. So, considering the 90-day period is over, and that it was just a 90-day period to, not remove the tree essentially and see if any of that stuff would work. We're just want to let you all know we're moving forward with that removal, and,
So as a
Yeah.
reminder, for
Please.
anyone, so Hillside, there, where on Lafayette, where you see the ABC buildings,
Mhm.
there was always for decades a
Mhm.
cut through, like an
Mhm.
unofficial cut through. That was pretty official if you walked it. It was a well beaten path, and the ABC buildings decided to fence that off.
Mhm.
And so now everyone from that area is forced to go on to Greenleaf and then the road there. And so it's pretty dangerous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the vote at the time was to postpone the removal for 90 days. Eric Eby did present and explain that it was these are the minutes, just so we have them on as part of this discussion. He did say that there was a site challenge with that. The residents request the removal of those trees so they could have a safer access, albeit not a formal sidewalk, up along the green strip on the north side of Greenleaf. Our interpretation of the vote, where it says postponed, is that it was appropriately posted. Hearing was heard, was a vote taken, and it gives us the authority, but we wanted to confirm that the committee's concurrent with that interpretation, and that we don't have an issue if we move forward. If not, we would repost it and go through the process. There will be a sidewalk there. The tree will be coming down at some point, in the next year.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's in the CIP.
Yeah, the monies will be available in July, but we won't be able to do the construction likely till next spring.
And was the neighborhood, was it split on that or more people for it?
I
Or
watched the whole. I
did you
watched,
read? Yeah,
and it was a pretty even split.
okay, that's what I remembered.
Having said that, though, the individuals who we hear more from the people who want it removed now, because it's still a persistent problem,
Mhm.
despite the fact that people showed support for keeping a tree. So that's
I would say
I'm in a
this
hard place with that.
week alone, the city council probably received within the last 7 days, 8 or 9 emails from residents in support of removal. And
Mhm.
we are not, as of now, receiving emails for people who are against it. So
Okay.
but I will say, as I have friends that live in that neighborhood, it is there's a lot of young kids. There's a lot of like sub-age, 10 children in that neighborhood. And it is really, even just getting to the high school, it's just so precarious. It is
Absolutely. I
really
understand that.
hard. And
So-
it's hard because it's a
Okay.
beautiful big tree.
So if residents who are interested in this and want to relook at it, it's October 11th, Tree and Greenery meeting, so that would be in the records. So
Thanks
Okay.
for the information and
there's no
proceed.
concurrence or no opposition, then we will move forward with that removal.
Safety
Thank you very much.
first. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for redoing
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Sorry to keep you.
Yeah, sorry to keep you. And I can talk about Clover Lawn next meeting.
We're actually thinking about,
I got a whole thing on Clover Lawn.
Yeah.
I was telling you that we had to remove those.
Recording stopped.
Okay.
I saw it.
Thank you.
It's already stopped.
Remove those trees, and then AJ came and looked
Yeah,
at the
hold on a
two
second.
maples that were in my front.
Yeah.
I had a little get together this weekend, and